Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Life. Harvey Ingram stood in his spotless kitchen, methodically cleaning the cast iron skillet he'd used to prepare dinner. Everything in their suburban Chicago home had its place, just like Harvey preferred. At 42, he'd built a successful career as a forensic accountant, a profession that demanded precision and an eye for details others missed. His methodical nature had served him well, both professionally and personally. "Dad, dinner was amazing," 12-year-old Emma said, wrapping her thin arms around his waist from behind. Harvey smiled, setting down the skillet to ruffle her dark hair, the same shade as his own. "Just wait until you see what I'm making for your birthday next week," Harvey replied, turning to face his daughter. He frowned slightly, noticing how pale she looked. Emma had always been delicate, but lately she seemed even more fragile. "I can't wait." Emma beamed, though Harvey noticed she was gripping the counter for support. From the living room came the sound of Belinda's laughter, bright, musical, and perfectly timed for whoever she was video chatting with. Harvey's wife of 15 years had a gift for presentation. Everything about Belinda Ingram appeared flawless. Her honey blonde hair never seemed out of place. Her makeup was always perfect, and she had an uncanny ability to present their family as the picture of suburban success. Harvey had met Belinda during his graduate studies. She'd been working at a medical clinic then, charming patients and doctors alike with her warm bedside manner. He'd been instantly drawn to her nurturing nature, especially after growing up with emotionally distant parents. When Emma was born, Belinda had transformed into what Harvey believed was the perfect mother, attentive, caring, and deeply invested in their daughter's well-being. Mom's telling her book club about Emma's latest doctor's appointment. Emma said, her voice carrying a note of resignation that seemed too mature for her age. Harvey's brow furrowed. Emma had been to the doctor frequently over the past 2 years. Stomach issues, fatigue, mysterious illnesses that would come and go. Belinda was always the first to notice Emma's symptoms, always the one pushing for more tests, more consultations with specialists. "How are you feeling tonight, sweetheart?" Harvey asked, kneeling down to Emma's level. "A little tired, but okay," Emma replied, though her smile seemed forced. From the living room, Belinda's voice carried over. "Oh yes, Emma's been such a brave little fighter. The doctors are still running tests, but you know how much I worry about her. A mother's intuition." Harvey had heard this speech dozens of times. Belinda's book club, her gym friends, their neighbors, everyone knew about Emma's health struggles and Belinda's dedication as a mother. The way Belinda told it, she was a saint caring for a chronically ill child while Harvey worked long hours, leaving her to handle the medical crisis alone. "Why don't you go get ready for bed?" Harvey suggested. "I'll come read with you in a few minutes." As Emma headed upstairs, Harvey noticed her stumble slightly. His protective instincts flared, but he pushed down the worry. Belinda had everything under control with the doctors. She'd been handling Emma's care with the same meticulous attention she brought to everything else. Later that evening, as Harvey reviewed case files in his home office, he heard Belinda on the phone with her sister Patty McGraw. "I just don't know what else to do," Belinda was saying, her voice carrying the perfect note of maternal anguish. "The poor thing is getting worse, and Harvey, well, you know how men are. He thinks I'm being overprotective, but a mother knows." Harvey paused, his pen hovering over a financial discrepancy he'd been tracking. Was he being dismissive? He'd always trusted Belinda's judgment when it came to Emma's care. Medical issues weren't his expertise, numbers were. And Belinda had always been so knowledgeable, so proactive about their daughter's health. "I've been doing so much research," Belinda continued. "There are these new treatments, but they're expensive. Harvey's always worried about money, but what price can you put on your child's life?" Harvey set down his pen. They weren't struggling financially. His forensic accounting firm was thriving. But Belinda was right to prioritize Emma's health over his natural caution about spending. As he prepared for bed, Harvey found himself studying his reflection in the bathroom mirror. At 6'2" with broad shoulders and graying temples, he cut an imposing figure. His colleagues often commented on his intensity, the way his dark eyes could dissect a lie or expose hidden truths in financial records. But when it came to his family, especially Emma's illness, he felt helpless. "You're brooding again," Belinda said, entering the bathroom in her silk nightgown. Even after 15 years of marriage, she remained strikingly beautiful. "Just thinking about Emma," Harvey replied. "Maybe we should get another opinion. Try a different specialist." "I've already scheduled an appointment with Dr. Chambers at Children's Memorial," Belinda said, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "See? I told you I have everything handled." Harvey nodded, allowing himself to lean into his wife's embrace. Belinda had always been the emotional center of their family, while he provided stability and security. It was a partnership that had worked for over a decade. But as he drifted off to sleep that night, Harvey couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Not just with Emma's health, though that was certainly troubling, but with something deeper. Perhaps it was his forensic instincts, honed by years of uncovering financial deceptions, but there was a pattern here that he couldn't quite identify. The next morning brought another typical scene. Belinda fussing over Emma's breakfast while their daughter pushed food around her plate, claiming her stomach hurt. Harvey watched from behind his coffee cup as Belinda took Emma's temperature, felt her forehead, and made concerned noises. "I think we should keep her home from school today," Belinda announced. "She doesn't look well at all." Emma's face fell. "But Dad, you promised to help with my science project tonight." "We can work on it this weekend if you're feeling better," Harvey said, though he noticed Emma seemed more disappointed than relieved about missing school. As Harvey left for work, he kissed Emma's forehead and was struck by how clammy her skin felt. The worry gnawed at him throughout the morning as he reviewed financial records for a corporate fraud case. By afternoon, his unease had transformed into something sharper, a recognition pattern that his analytical mind couldn't ignore. The realization hit him during a meeting with a client whose business partner had been systematically stealing from their company. The partner had been clever, taking small amounts over time, always having plausible explanations for discrepancies. The pattern of deception was subtle but consistent, just like Emma's mysterious symptoms that always seemed to occur when Harvey wasn't home. Harvey excused himself from the meeting and drove home early, his mind racing with possibilities he didn't want to consider. Chapter 2. The Unthinkable. Harvey pulled into his driveway 2 hours earlier than usual, his stomach churning with a mixture of worry and something darker, suspicion. As a forensic accountant, he learned to trust his instincts when patterns emerged that didn't make sense. Emma's illness followed a pattern that was beginning to feel less like random medical misfortune and more like something else. He entered through the front door and immediately heard retching from upstairs. Taking the steps 2 at a time, Harvey found Emma in the upstairs bathroom, doubled over the toilet. What he saw made his blood run cold. She was vomiting blood. "Emma." He rushed to her side, holding her hair back as she continued to retch. Her small body was shaking, and her breathing came in short, panicked gasps. I can't breathe," Emma whispered between heaves. Harvey's protective instincts exploded into action. He scooped Emma into his arms, her body feeling frighteningly light, and called for Belinda as he rushed down the stairs. "We need to go to the hospital now," he shouted. Belinda emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. When she saw Emma in Harvey's arms, covered in blood, her reaction struck Harvey as odd. There was surprise, yes, but also something else, calculation. "She's doing this for attention. Stop overreacting," Belinda sighed, her tone more annoyed than concerned. "You know how dramatic she gets when you come home early. She probably bit her tongue or something." Harvey stared at his wife in disbelief. Their daughter was vomiting blood and struggling to breathe, and Belinda's response was dismissive irritation. "Are you insane?" Harvey snapped, pushing past her toward the garage. "Look at her." "Harvey, you're being ridiculous. If we run to the ER every time Emma has a little episode." "A little episode?" Harvey's voice rose to a roar. "She's vomiting blood, Belinda." Without waiting for a response, Harvey strapped Emma into the back seat of his car and peeled out of the driveway. In the rearview mirror, he saw Belinda standing in the doorway, her arms crossed, wearing an expression of mild annoyance rather than panic. The drive to Chicago Memorial Hospital took 12 minutes, the longest 12 minutes of Harvey's life. Emma drifted in and out of consciousness, her breathing shallow and rapid. Harvey spoke to her continuously, keeping her awake, promising her everything would be okay. In the emergency room, the staff took one look at Emma and immediately whisked her into a trauma bay. Harvey provided what medical history he could, though he realized with growing alarm how little he actually knew about Emma's recent treatments. Belinda had always handled the medical appointments, claiming Harvey was too busy with work. Dr. Salvatore Chambers, a tall, thin man in his 50s, took charge of Emma's case. As Harvey watched through the glass partition, medical staff worked quickly, drawing blood, inserting in running tests he didn't understand. "Mr. Ingram?" Dr. Chambers approached, his expression grave. "We need to ask you some questions about your daughter's recent medical history." "Of course. My wife usually handles. She should be here soon." "What medications has Emma been taking?" Harvey felt a chill of inadequacy. My wife manages all of that. Belinda knows Emma's medical details better than I do." Dr. Chambers nodded, making notes. "When did these symptoms first appear?" "About 2 years ago. She started having stomach issues, fatigue. It's been getting progressively worse." "And who has been managing her care during this time?" "My wife, Belinda. She's very knowledgeable about medical things. She used to work in a clinic." Dr. Chambers' expression shifted slightly. "I see. And you haven't been involved in the medical appointments?" Harvey felt defensive. "I work long hours." Belinda insisted she could handle it, and she's always been so thorough. 20 minutes later, Belinda arrived, perfectly composed despite the emergency. Her hair was styled, her makeup touched up, and she carried a small purse that looked more suited for a social event than a medical crisis. When Dr. Chambers saw her walk in, something extraordinary happened. The color drained from his face, and his hand immediately went to the phone. "Security," Harvey heard him say urgently. "I need security to room 7 immediately. And call the police. Call the cops now." Harvey froze on the spot, his mind struggling to process what was happening. "Doctor, what's going on?" But Dr. Chambers was already moving toward Belinda, his face a mask of recognition and barely controlled fury. "Belinda Alvarado," he said, using a name Harvey had never heard before. "Or should I say, Belinda McGraw? Or perhaps Belinda Chun? You've used so many names over the years." Belinda's perfect composure cracked for just an instant before reassembling itself. "I'm sorry, doctor, but I think you have me confused with someone else. I'm Belinda Ingram." "No confusion at all," Dr. Chambers replied coldly. "I remember you very clearly from my residency in Philadelphia 8 years ago. You were a concerned mother then too, weren't you? Bringing your sick child to the ER repeatedly. What was that little boy's name? Tyler? Tommy?" Harvey felt the world tilt around him. "What are you talking about?" Security guards appeared in the doorway just as Dr. Chambers continued his devastating revelation. "Mrs. Ingram, or whatever your real name is, your daughter is suffering from chronic poisoning. Someone has been systematically administering small doses of several substances over an extended period. The blood work shows traces of ipecac syrup, which would cause the vomiting, and small amounts of prescription sedatives that would explain her fatigue and breathing problems." The room seemed to spin around Harvey. "Poisoning? That's impossible. Who would—" The words died in his throat as understanding crashed over him like a physical blow. "Munchausen syndrome by proxy," Dr. Chambers explained, his eyes never leaving Belinda. "A psychological disorder where a caregiver deliberately makes someone in their care sick to gain attention and sympathy. Your wife has been slowly poisoning your daughter." Harvey's legs nearly gave out. He grabbed the doorframe for support, his forensic mind automatically cataloging the evidence that had been right in front of him all along. Emma's symptoms that only appeared when he wasn't home, Belinda's extensive medical knowledge, her constant need for sympathy and attention as the devoted mother, her dismissive reaction to Emma's emergency tonight. "That's ridiculous," Belinda said, her voice rising. "Harvey, don't listen to this. This man is clearly unstable. I would never hurt Emma." But her protest rang hollow in Harvey's ears. He was remembering other things now. How Belinda always insisted on preparing Emma's meals, how she discouraged Harvey from attending medical appointments, how she always seemed to have a ready supply of the specific medications Emma needed. "You sick bitch," Harvey whispered, the words torn from his throat like broken glass. The security guards moved to flank Belinda as police sirens wailed in the distance. Dr. Chambers placed a gentle hand on Harvey's shoulder. "Your daughter is going to be okay, Mr. Ingram. We caught this in time. With proper treatment and the removal of the toxins from her system, she should make a full recovery." Harvey sank into a chair, his body shaking with a mixture of relief and rage so intense it threatened to consume him. Emma would live. But the woman he'd loved and trusted for 15 years, the woman he believed was the perfect mother, had been slowly killing their daughter for attention. As the police led Belinda away in handcuffs, she turned to Harvey one last time. "You'll never understand," she said, her mask finally dropping completely to reveal something cold and calculating underneath. "The power, the sympathy, the way everyone looked at me as the perfect mother sacrificing everything for her sick child. You could never give me that kind of attention." Watching his wife, the stranger who wore his wife's face, being taken away, Harvey felt something fundamental shift inside him. The methodical, control man was still there, but underneath, a darker force was awakening. Belinda had stolen 2 years of his daughter's childhood, had nearly killed her for the sake of twisted psychological gratification. The legal system would handle her prosecution, but Harvey was beginning to realize that justice and revenge were two very different things. Chapter 3. Pieces of the Past. 3 days after Belinda's arrest, Harvey sat in his home office surrounded by documents that painted a picture of deception so elaborate it took his breath away. Emma was recovering in the hospital, her body slowly purging the toxins that had kept her sick for nearly 2 years. The doctors assured him she would make a full recovery, but the psychological scars would take longer to heal. Detective Rick Prince, a weathered man in his 50s with kind eyes and the demeanor of someone who'd seen too much, sat across from Harvey's desk. Between them lay evidence bags containing pill bottles, syringes, and medical records that told a story of systematic child abuse. "Your wife is a professional," Detective Prince said grimly. "This isn't her first time." Harvey looked up from the forged medical documents he'd been examining. "What do you mean?" "We've been in contact with law enforcement in Philadelphia, Phoenix, and Denver. She's operated under at least 4 different identities over the past 15 years. Always the same pattern. Marry a financially stable man, have or adopt a child, then begin the systematic poisoning while presenting herself as the devoted mother of a sick child." The words hit Harvey like physical blows. "Other children?" 3 that we know of. One died, a little boy named Timothy Chun in Phoenix. The medical examiner ruled it natural causes at the time, but now, Detective Prince shook his head. "The other 2 survived when their fathers became suspicious and left her, taking the children. But it took them years to figure out what was happening." Harvey felt sick. "How did I miss this? I'm supposed to be good at spotting deception. You were looking at financial records, not medical ones. And she's exceptionally skilled at manipulation. Look at this." Detective Prince pulled out a thick folder. "She's been documenting everything, Emma's symptoms, her own sacrifice and dedication as a mother, even your supposed neglect as a father too focused on work." Harvey opened the folder and found page after page of meticulous notes written in Belinda's neat handwriting. Reading them was like viewing his life through a funhouse mirror, recognizable but distorted beyond recognition. Harvey came home late again tonight. Doesn't seem to care that Emma had another episode. I sat with her for 3 hours while he worked in his office. Sometimes I wonder if he even loves her. Emma responded well to the new treatment plan. Dr. Martinez says I'm one of the most dedicated mothers he's ever worked with. It's nice to have someone understand what I'm going through. Harvey questioned the medical bills today. I wish he wouldn't make me feel guilty for trying to save our daughter's life. Jesus, Harvey whispered. She was building a case against me. More than that, Detective Prince said. We found evidence that she was planning to leave you soon. She's been in contact with a divorce attorney, claiming spousal neglect and medical abandonment of your daughter. With Emma's medical history and her documentation of your supposed indifference, she would have gotten custody and significant alimony. Harvey's hands clenched into fists. The scope of Belinda's manipulation was staggering. She hadn't just been abusing Emma for attention. She'd been systematically destroying his relationship with his daughter while positioning herself as the victim and hero of their family story. There's more, Detective Prince continued. We found communications between your wife and someone named D. Minor. Ring any bells? Harvey shook his head. D. Minor runs a blog called Warrior Moms. It's a support group for mothers of chronically ill children. Your wife has been a featured contributor for the past year, sharing Emma's journey and her own struggles as a devoted mother. The blog has over 50,000 subscribers, and your wife has received substantial donations through the site. Donations? Harvey felt his analytical mind engaging, finding patterns in the chaos. Over $30,000 in the past year. Small amounts from hundreds of people who were moved by Emma's story and wanted to help with medical expenses. Money that went into an account you never knew about. Harvey stood up abruptly, needing to move to process this information. Belinda hadn't just been abusing Emma for psychological gratification. She'd been monetizing their daughter's suffering. What happens now, he asked. She'll be charged with aggravated child abuse, fraud, and in Timothy Chen's case, potentially murder. But the legal process will take months, maybe years. And given her history of manipulation, she'll probably present herself as the victim of a vindictive husband and overzealous law enforcement. Harvey walked to his window, looking out at the yard where Emma used to play before she became too sick. His daughter would recover physically, but the trauma of discovering that her mother had been poisoning her would require years of therapy. The woman he'd loved and trusted had stolen his daughter's childhood and nearly destroyed both their lives for money and attention. There's something else you should know, Detective Prince said quietly. Your wife's real name appears to be Belinda McGraw. She has a sister named Patty who may have been aware of the abuse. Harvey turned sharply. Patty? They talked on the phone regularly. We're investigating her involvement. Phone records show she received several payments from Belinda over the past year, and some of the donations to the Warrior Moms blog can be traced back to her. The conspiracy was larger than Harvey had imagined. It wasn't just Belinda. She'd had help, encouragement, possibly even guidance from her sister. That evening, Harvey sat in Emma's hospital room watching his daughter sleep. The color was already returning to her cheeks as her body healed from years of systematic poisoning. But when she was awake, she asked questions Harvey didn't know how to answer. Why did Mom want to hurt me, Dad? Was I really sick, or was it all pretend? Are you going to leave me too? Each question broke Harvey's heart a little more. Emma's trust had been shattered, not just in her mother, but in the fundamental safety that children should feel with their parents. Dr. Chambers stopped by during his evening rounds. How are you holding up, Mr. Ingram? I keep thinking about all the signs I missed, Harvey admitted. The way she insisted on handling all of Emma's care, how she discouraged me from getting too involved with the medical stuff. She made me feel like I was being a typical negligent father by trusting her expertise. Perpetrators of Munchausen by proxy are often extremely skilled manipulators, Dr. Chambers said. They isolate their victims from other adults who might notice inconsistencies. Your wife systematically excluded you from Emma's medical care, while simultaneously making you feel guilty for not being more involved. It's a classic pattern. How do I help Emma get through this? Time, therapy, and the knowledge that she's safe now. Children are remarkably resilient when they feel secure and loved. After Dr. Chambers left, Harvey sat alone with his sleeping daughter and made a decision that would have surprised his colleagues. Harvey Ingram had built his career on working within the system, using legal and ethical means to expose wrongdoing. But the system had failed to protect his daughter. The legal process would be slow, and there was no guarantee that Belinda would receive the punishment she deserved. For the first time in his adult life, Harvey began considering justice that existed outside the boundaries of law. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Your wife is a saint. You don't deserve her or your daughter. Hope you're proud of destroying your family. Harvey stared at the message, his jaw clenching. The online community that Belinda had cultivated still believed her version of events. To them, he was the villain who had turned against a devoted mother. Even now, from jail, Belinda was manipulating the narrative. A second message followed. Belinda has friends. People who care about her. You better watch yourself. Harvey screenshot both messages and forwarded them to Detective Prince. Then he sat back in his chair and began planning. His forensic mind, trained to uncover hidden truths and expose elaborate deceptions, turned toward a new purpose. Belinda McGraw had spent years crafting her perfect victim persona, building an online following, and systematically destroying his family. The legal system would prosecute her for the crimes, but Harvey was going to make sure the world knew exactly who she really was. And if her friends wanted to make threats, Harvey would show them what happened when you threatened his daughter. The methodical accountant was still there, but underneath, something harder and more dangerous was taking shape. Emma would recover, and Belinda would pay, not just in court, but in every way that mattered. Chapter 4. The Hunt Begins. 2 weeks after Belinda's arrest, Harvey had transformed his home office into a war room. Emma was finally home from the hospital, slowly gaining strength and color, but requiring round-the-clock monitoring to ensure no lasting effects from the poisoning. Harvey had taken extended leave from his firm, telling his partners only that he needed to focus on his daughter's recovery. The truth was more complex. Harvey had discovered that justice and revenge were indeed different things, and he was methodically planning both. The threatening messages had escalated. His home address, Emma's school information, and even photos of his house had been posted on several Warrior Moms forums with captions suggesting he was an abusive father who had framed his innocent wife. Belinda's online supporters had become a virtual mob, and Harvey realized that even behind bars, his wife was still manipulating the narrative. Detective Prince arrived that morning with updates and new concerns. Belinda made bail, he announced grimly. Her sister Patty McGraw posted the $500,000 bond. Harvey felt his blood chill. How is that possible? She tried to kill Emma. Her lawyer argued that she was a pillar of the community with no flight risk, and the judge bought it. There are restrictions. She can't contact you, or Emma can't leave the state, and she has to surrender her passport. But she's out. Where is she staying? With her sister on the north side. We have her under surveillance, but Harvey... Detective Prince's expression grew grave. There's something else. We've been monitoring her communications, and she's been in contact with several people who seem very invested in proving her innocence. Harvey leaned forward. The online supporters? More than that. She's been coordinating with them, providing her version of events, painting herself as the victim of an elaborate frame-up by a controlling husband. Some of these people have resources, money, connections, technical skills. Harvey's forensic instincts sharpened. You think they're planning something? I think your wife has built herself a small army of people who believe her story completely. And some of them seem willing to go to extraordinary lengths to help her. That afternoon, while Emma napped, Harvey began his own investigation. Using skills honed by years of financial investigation, he started mapping Belinda's network of supporters. What he found was more sophisticated than he'd expected. The Warrior Moms community wasn't just a support group. It was a complex organization with significant resources. D. Minor, the blog's founder, had been using the site to raise funds not just for medical expenses, but to fight injustice against mothers who were wrongfully accused of harming their children. Harvey discovered that Belinda wasn't the first victimized mother the group had supported. Digging deeper, Harvey found connections to other cases. Mothers who had been accused of Munchausen by proxy but had avoided conviction due to insufficient evidence or prosecutorial overreach. In several cases, key witnesses had recanted their testimony or evidence had mysteriously disappeared. His phone rang. The caller ID showed Emma's school. Mr. Ingram, this is Principal Sims. There's been an incident. Harvey's heart raced. Is Emma okay? She's fine. But someone tried to access the school's database this morning, attempting to obtain Emma's records and your contact information. Our IT department traced it to several different IP addresses, but the intrusion was sophisticated. Harvey's hands clenched. I'll be right there. At the school, Principal Preston Sims, a stern but caring man in his 60s, showed Harvey the security footage from that morning. We also had a woman claiming to be his social worker asking about Emma's attendance and academic performance. Principal Sims explained. When we asked for credentials, she became evasive and left quickly. Description: tall, blonde, probably in her 40s. professional appearance, but something felt off about her. Harvey studied the grainy footage. The woman wasn't Belinda, but there was something familiar about her bearing, her mannerisms. We've increased security around Emma's classroom, Principal Sims continued. But Mr. Ingram, I have to ask, should we be concerned about your daughter's safety? Harvey made a decision that went against every instinct he'd developed over years of careful, methodical behavior. Yes, and I need to know immediately if anyone else comes asking about Emma or our family. That evening, Harvey hired Ian Blackwell, a former police detective who now worked as a private investigator. Ian was a compact, intense man with the kind of quiet competence that Harvey recognized in himself. Your wife has definitely been busy, Ian reported after his initial assessment. The Warrior Moms organization has connections to several law firms that specialize in defending parents accused of child abuse. They've also got a network of sympathetic medical professionals who provide alternative interpretations of evidence. Alternative interpretations? Doctors willing to testify that symptoms of poisoning could actually be rare genetic disorders, immune deficiencies, or psychosomatic responses to family stress. They create reasonable doubt where none should exist. Harvey felt sick. How many children have suffered because of this? More than you want to know. The good news is that your wife made a mistake with Emma. Dr. Chambers recognized her from a previous case, and the physical evidence is overwhelming. But she's not going down without a fight, and she's got resources you didn't know about. Ian handed Harvey a file folder. Bank records for your wife's hidden accounts. She's been receiving money from the Warrior Moms Network for over a year. Not just donations, payments. She was being compensated for sharing Emma's story and for recruiting other, victimized mothers to the cause. Harvey opened the folder and felt his world shift again. The deposits totaled over $100,000, far more than Detective Prince had mentioned. Belinda hadn't just been abusing Emma for attention and small donations. She'd been part of a larger organization that profited from child abuse by creating a network of professional victims. There's more, Ian continued. We traced some of the payments to a corporation called Maternal Advocacy Solutions. Officially, they provide legal support and counseling for mothers dealing with the family court system. Unofficially, they seem to specialize in helping women escape consequences for child abuse by claiming they're victims of wrongful prosecution. Who runs this organization? A woman named Dr. Louise Dalton. She's a psychologist who's built her career on defending mothers accused of Munchausen by proxy. She claims the syndrome is a misogynistic invention used to persecute devoted mothers. Harvey studied Dr. Dalton's photo in the file. She was an elegant woman in her 50s with silver hair and the kind of authoritative bearing that would be convincing on a witness stand. Is she legitimate? That's where it gets interesting. She's got credentials, PhD in psychology, published research, expert witness in dozens of cases. But her methodology is questionable, and several of her former clients have been rearrested when their children ended up in the hospital again. That night, after Emma was asleep, Harvey sat in his office planning his next moves. The legal system was handling Belinda's prosecution, but this network of enablers would likely help her escape meaningful consequences. Even if she was convicted, she'd probably serve minimal time and emerge as a martyr to her cause. Harvey opened his laptop and began creating a detailed dossier on everyone connected to the Warrior Moms network. His forensic skills, typically used to trace financial fraud, were now focused on mapping a conspiracy that had enabled the abuse of children for profit. His phone buzzed with another threatening message. You think you won, but Belinda has more friends than you know. Watch your back. Harvey screenshot the message and added it to his growing file. Then he did something that would have surprised his colleagues. He began planning how to systematically destroy every person who had enabled his wife's abuse of Emma. The methodical accountant was still there, organizing evidence and building cases. But underneath, something darker was taking control. These people had profited from his daughter's suffering and were now threatening his family. Harvey Ingram was about to show them what happened when someone threatened his child. Chapter 5. The Web Unravels. Harvey's investigation had been running for 3 weeks when he made a discovery that changed everything. Hidden in Belinda's encrypted communications with the Warrior Moms network he found evidence that the conspiracy was far more extensive than anyone had realized. Emma was thriving now, gaining weight and energy as the toxins left her system. She'd started seeing a therapist, Dr. Teresa Stevenson, who specialized in helping children recover from abuse. But Emma's healing couldn't begin fully until she felt safe, and as long as Belinda's network remained active, that safety was an illusion. Ian Blackwell arrived at Harvey's house with a grim expression and a thick file folder. "We have a problem," Ian announced. "Belinda's lawyer, Wayne Greer, isn't just defending her. He's part of the network. We traced payments from Maternal Advocacy Solutions to his firm totaling over $300,000 in the past 2 years." Harvey studied the financial records Ian presented. Wayne Greer was a prominent family law attorney with an impressive reputation for defending mothers in custody battles. What the public didn't know was that many of his clients were women who had been accused of abusing their children. "How does the scam work?" Harvey asked. "They identify mothers who are desperate, usually facing loss of custody due to suspected abuse. Dr. Louise Dalton provides psychological evaluations claiming the mothers are victims of false accusations. Greer handles the legal defense, often negotiating plea deals that involve no jail time and supervised visitation. The Warrior Moms Network provides financial support and online advocacy. And the mothers who don't actually deserve help get mixed in with the ones who do." Exactly. It's brilliant in a sick way. They hide guilty clients among a handful of genuinely wrongfully accused mothers, making it nearly impossible to challenge the network without appearing to attack legitimate victims. Harvey felt his anger crystallizing into something colder and more focused. What about Dr. Dalton? Is she a true believer or a knowing participant? That's where it gets interesting. Ian opened another folder. Dr. Dalton lost custody of her own children 15 years ago when her ex-husband proved she had been lying about their son's medical condition. The boy had been hospitalized repeatedly for symptoms that disappeared whenever he stayed with his father. Harvey looked up sharply. She's projecting her own guilt onto the system? More than that, she's built an entire career on the premise that Munchausen by proxy is a patriarchal conspiracy to silence devoted mothers. But the psychological profiles we've compiled suggest she genuinely believes her own narrative. She's convinced herself that she was wrongfully persecuted, and now she's saving other mothers from the same fate. The scope of the deception was staggering. Dr. Dalton was simultaneously a victim of her own delusions and the architect of a system that enabled child abuse on a massive scale. How many children have been hurt because of this network? Ian's expression grew grave. "We've identified at least 20 cases in the past 5 years where children suffered ongoing abuse because the network helped their mothers avoid prosecution. 3 children died." Harvey felt something break inside him. 3 children were dead because this network had helped their abusers escape justice. Emma had nearly become a 4th. What can we prove legally? That's the problem. Individually, each part of the network operates within legal boundaries. Dr. Dalton provides expert testimony, which is a right as a licensed psychologist. Greer defends his clients aggressively, which is his obligation as their attorney. The Warrior Moms provide financial and emotional support, which appears charitable. But together, it's a conspiracy to enable child abuse. But proving that in court would require testimony from victims who are either dead or too traumatized to speak, and evidence that's been carefully compartmentalized. That evening, Harvey sat in Emma's room as she slept, watching the rise and fall of her breathing. She was safe now, but how many other children were suffering while this network operated with impunity? His phone buzzed with a call from Detective Prince. "We have a situation," the detective said. "Belinda violated her bail conditions. She was caught near Emma's school this afternoon." Harvey's blood ran cold. What happened? She didn't approach the school directly, but she was parked across the street during dismissal time, photographing children as they left. When confronted by our surveillance team, she claimed she was visiting a friend in the neighborhood. What happens now? We're processing the warrant for her arrest, but her lawyer is already claiming this was an innocent misunderstanding. Given her network's resources, she'll probably make bail again within 48 hours. After hanging up, Harvey made a decision that would have horrified the man he'd been a month ago. The legal system was too slow, too vulnerable to manipulation by people with resources and connections. Emma would never be truly safe while Belinda's network remained intact. Harvey opened his laptop and began drafting a detailed expose of the entire conspiracy. But instead of sending it to law enforcement, he uploaded it to a secure server and began preparing to release it simultaneously to major news outlets, medical journals, and law enforcement agencies across multiple states. If the network operated through manipulation of public opinion and media narratives, Harvey would beat them at their own game. But his plan went beyond simple exposure. He was going to systematically destroy each member of the network using their own methods against them. Dr. Louise Dalton had built her career on discrediting legitimate medical professionals and legal proceedings. Harvey was going to expose the financial connections between her charitable work and the network of abusers she enabled. Wayne Greer had made millions defending child abusers by questioning the credibility of prosecutors and medical experts. Harvey was going to provide evidence showing how Greer had knowingly defended guilty clients while hiding behind attorney-client privilege. The Warrior Moms network had weaponized social media to attack anyone who challenged their narrative. Harvey was going to flood their platforms with evidence of their true nature, using their own online tactics against them. But the centerpiece of his plan was Belinda herself. She had spent years crafting a perfect victim persona, manipulating everyone around her through emotional manipulation and false narratives. Harvey was going to strip away that facade and show the world who she really was. His phone rang again. Emma's therapist, Dr. Stevenson. Mr. Ingram, I'm calling because Emma mentioned something during our session today that I think you should know about. Harvey felt his stomach drop. What is it? She said that her mother used to give her special medicine that would make her feel sick so that Mommy could take her to see the doctors. She said Mommy told her it was their special secret and that if she ever told anyone, Daddy would go away forever. Harvey gripped the phone so tightly he was afraid it might break. Even now, after everything that had been revealed, he was discovering new layers to Belinda's manipulation. She had terrorized Emma into silence by threatening to destroy her relationship with her father. Doctor, is Emma ready to talk to the police about this? With proper preparation and support, I believe she could provide testimony. But Mr. Ingram, I need you to know, Emma is also carrying significant guilt about her mother's arrest. She feels responsible for breaking their secret and getting her mother in trouble. Harvey closed his eyes, feeling the weight of what Belinda had done to their daughter's psyche. The physical healing was just the beginning. Emma would be dealing with the psychological trauma for years. What can I do to help her? Keep doing what you're doing. Be consistent, be truthful, and make sure she knows that none of this was her fault. Children need to feel safe before they can truly begin healing. After the call ended, Harvey looked at his laptop screen, where his expose of the network was taking shape. Justice through the legal system was important, but Emma's safety and healing were paramount. Harvey was going to make sure that Belinda and everyone who enabled her never had the opportunity to hurt another child. And if that required methods that existed outside the boundaries of legal procedure, so be it. The war for his daughter's life was about to begin in earnest. Chapter 6, The Perfect Trap. Harvey had spent 2 months carefully documenting the Warrior Moms network when opportunity presented itself in an unexpected form. Belinda had been released on bail again, despite violating her original conditions, thanks to Wayne Greer's legal maneuvering and Dr. Louise Dalton's expert testimony claiming that Belinda's presence near the school was a manifestation of separation anxiety rather than stalking behavior. But their arrogance had created an opening that Harvey's forensic mind immediately recognized. The network was planning a major publicity campaign to support Belinda's case. Dr. Dalton would be presenting her research on false allegations at a medical conference in Chicago. Wayne Greer had scheduled a press conference to announce a civil lawsuit against the hospital and Harvey for defamation and conspiracy. Most importantly, D. Minor was organizing a Justice for Belinda rally to be held outside the courthouse. They were gathering all their key players in one place at one time, convinced that their coordinated media strategy would shift public opinion in Belinda's favor. Harvey was going to use their own event to destroy them. Ian Blackwell arrived at Harvey's house with the final pieces of evidence needed for Harvey's plan. "The financial records are damning," Ian reported. "We can trace direct payments from Dr. Dalton's research foundation to at least 12 women who later had their children removed from their custody due to abuse. The payments always came after negative publicity about their cases, suggesting they were being compensated for their silence." Harvey studied the bank records. The pattern was clear. The network wasn't just enabling abuse. They were actively bribing victims to prevent them from exposing the system. What about Wayne Greer? Even better, we found communications between Greer and a pharmaceutical company that manufactures Ipecac syrup. Greer has been providing them with advance warning about upcoming Munchausen by proxy cases, allowing them to withdraw their products from certain markets to avoid liability. Harvey felt his anger crystallize into something colder and more focused. The corruption was even more extensive than he'd imagined. Pharmaceutical companies were profiting from foreknowledge of child abuse cases. And Dee Minor? She's the key to everything. The Warrior Moms blog isn't just a support group. It's a recruitment tool. She identifies vulnerable mothers facing custody battles and introduces them to the network. We found evidence that she receives referral fees for every new client she brings to Greer's law firm. Harvey reviewed the complete dossier he'd compiled over the past months. Every member of the network, every financial connection, every child who had been hurt because of their conspiracy. The legal system had been too slow and too vulnerable to their manipulation, but Harvey had found a different path to justice. "Are you sure about this plan?" Ian asked quietly. "Once we set it in motion, there's no going back." Harvey looked at the photo of Emma on his desk, taken the previous week, showing her healthy and smiling for the first time in years. His daughter was healing, but she'd never be completely safe while this network remained operational. "I'm sure," Harvey said. The next morning, Harvey began executing the most complex investigation of his career. Using skills developed over years of forensic accounting, he created a series of false identities and online personas designed to infiltrate the Warrior Moms network from within. His first persona was Michael Sloan, a divorced father seeking custody of his son from an allegedly abusive mother. Harvey carefully crafted Michael's story to mirror cases the network had handled before, including financial documents showing he could afford their services. Within 48 hours, Dee Minor had contacted Michael directly, offering support and connecting him with Wayne Greer's law firm. The consultation was scheduled for the same day as their planned rally. Harvey's second persona was Dr. Daniel Holt, a pediatrician concerned about false allegations of abuse in his practice. He reached out to Dr. Dalton's research foundation, expressing interest in her work and offering to collaborate on a study about prosecutorial overreach in medical settings. Dr. Dalton scheduled a meeting for the day of her medical conference presentation. The third persona was the most dangerous, Jennifer Walsh, a mother whose daughter had died after being repeatedly hospitalized for mysterious symptoms. Harvey created Jennifer's story carefully, suggesting that she believed her ex-husband had somehow caused their daughter's death and that the medical establishment had covered it up. This persona attracted immediate attention from the network's most radical members, including several who offered to help Jennifer get justice through methods that weren't strictly legal. As the rally date approached, Harvey had documented dozens of conversations revealing the true nature of the network. Members casually discussed coaching mothers to lie in court, intimidating witnesses, and even falsifying medical records. Most damaging of all, he had recorded Wayne Greer explicitly stating that some of his clients were probably guilty, but that proving innocence was less important than winning cases. 2 days before the rally, Harvey received the call he'd been expecting. "Michael, this is Dee Minor. I wanted to let you know about a special event we're having this weekend. It's a rally to support one of our warrior mothers who's being persecuted by the system. I think you'd find it inspiring, and there will be opportunities to meet other fathers who face similar challenges." Harvey accepted the invitation, knowing that his presence at the rally would complete the trap he'd been setting for months. The night before the rally, Harvey sat with Emma as she did her homework at the kitchen table. She'd gained 15 pounds since leaving the hospital, and was finally keeping up with her grade level academically. The therapist said her progress was remarkable, but Harvey knew the real test would come when the legal proceedings began and Emma had to confront what her mother had done to her. "Dad," Emma looked up from her math homework. "Are you okay? You seem worried about something." Harvey considered how much to tell her. Emma knew her mother was in trouble for making her sick, but she didn't understand the full scope of the conspiracy that had enabled the abuse. "I'm making sure that what happened to you never happens to another child," Harvey said carefully. "Tomorrow is going to be an important day." Emma nodded solemnly. "Will Mom be there?" "Yes." "Will she try to hurt me again?" Harvey knelt down beside his daughter's chair, looking directly into her eyes. "Emma, I promise you, your mother will never hurt you or any other child again. Tomorrow, everyone is going to learn the truth about what she did." The next morning, Harvey dressed carefully in the conservative suit he'd worn to court proceedings throughout his career. But underneath the familiar exterior, he was carrying recording equipment that would capture everything that happened at the rally. As he drove toward downtown Chicago, Harvey felt the familiar calm that came with executing a carefully planned investigation. Every piece was in position, every contingency accounted for. In a few hours, the Warrior Moms network would be destroyed by their own arrogance and Harvey's methodical preparation. The trap was set. All that remained was to spring it. Chapter 7. Justice Served. The Justice for Belinda rally was held in Federal Plaza on a crisp October morning. Harvey arrived early, positioning himself among the crowd of supporters who genuinely believed they were defending an innocent mother. The irony wasn't lost on him. He was surrounded by well-meaning people who had been manipulated into enabling child abuse. Belinda stood on a small platform, looking every inch the persecuted victim. She wore a conservative blue dress and minimal makeup, her hair pulled back in a style that suggested maternal suffering rather than vanity. To the crowd of supporters, she appeared fragile and noble, a devoted mother destroyed by a vindictive system. Harvey felt sick watching her performance, knowing that Emma was safe at school only because he'd arranged for extra security. Even now, Belinda was manipulating the narrative, presenting herself as the victim rather than the perpetrator. Dr. Louise Dalton spoke first, her authoritative voice carrying across the plaza as she denounced the patriarchal medical establishment that persecuted devoted mothers. She presented statistics about wrongful accusations and emotional testimony about the tragedy of families torn apart by false allegations. The crowd responded with applause and supportive chants. To them, Dr. Dalton was a champion of maternal rights, a voice of reason in a system biased against women. Harvey activated his recording equipment as Wayne Greer took the microphone. "Belinda Ingram represents every mother who has ever been questioned about her devotion to her child," Greer declared. "The charges against her are based on the discredited testimony of a doctor with a grudge and the manipulated evidence of a husband seeking revenge in a custody battle." More applause. Harvey noted how skillfully Greer was reframing the narrative, making Dr. Chambers appear biased and Harvey appear vindictive. When Belinda finally spoke, her performance was masterful. She thanked her supporters with tears in her eyes, spoke about the agony of being separated from her daughter, and described the nightmare of being accused of harming the child she'd sacrificed everything to save. "Emma has always been my world," Belinda said, her voice breaking at just the right moment. "Every doctor's appointment, every sleepless night, every moment of worry, I did it all out of love. To be accused of hurting her is beyond my comprehension." Harvey felt his jaw clench as Belinda described the elaborate medical care she'd provided for Emma, presenting her systematic poisoning as devoted maternal sacrifice. The crowd was completely captivated by her performance. It was time to spring the trap. Harvey pulled out his phone and sent a single text message to Detective Prince. Now, within minutes, federal agents began moving through the crowd. Harvey watched as Dr. Dalton was approached by two agents who quietly showed her their badges before escorting her away from the platform. Similar scenes played out throughout the plaza as other key network members were simultaneously arrested. The crowd began to murmur in confusion as Wayne Greer was handcuffed in the middle of his speech defending Belinda's innocence. D Minor tried to flee but was stopped by agents who had been positioned at all exit points. But the real shock came when Detective Prince approached the platform with an arrest warrant for Belinda, not for the original charges of child abuse, but for conspiracy to commit fraud, racketeering, and accessory to murder in the death of Timothy Chin in Phoenix. As Belinda was led away in handcuffs for the second time, Harvey stepped forward and addressed the confused crowd through a portable loudspeaker he'd prepared for this moment. "My name is Harvey Ingram," he announced. "I'm the husband Belinda has been describing as vindictive and controlling. I'm also the father of Emma, the daughter she nearly killed through systematic poisoning." The crowd fell silent, uncertain how to process this development. "For the past 3 months, I've been documenting a conspiracy that enabled the abuse of dozens of children. The people you came here to support today weren't defending innocent mothers. They were operating a criminal enterprise that profited from child abuse." Harvey activated a projector that displayed financial records on a large screen visible to the entire plaza. Dr. Louise Dalton received over $800,000 in the past 2 years for providing false expert testimony defending child abusers. Wayne Greer's law firm was paid over $2 million for legal services that helped abusive mothers avoid prosecution. The Warrior Moms Network collected donations, supposedly from medical expenses, but actually used the money to bribe witnesses and falsify evidence. The displayed documents showed payment records, email communications, and bank transfers that painted a clear picture of the conspiracy. Harvey watched as the crowd's support turned to confusion, then to anger as they realized they'd been manipulated. "The woman you came here to support poisoned my daughter for nearly 2 years, documenting her suffering online to generate sympathy and donations. 3 children died because this network helped their abusers escape justice. My daughter nearly became the 4th. Harvey's voice grew stronger as he continued his methodical destruction of the network's narrative. "Every one of you who donated money to support these warrior mothers unknowingly funded child abuse. Every time you shared their stories or defended them online, you helped silence their victims. The people you trusted to fight injustice were the ones perpetrating it." The impact was immediate and devastating. Supporters began leaving the plaza, many in tears as they realized they'd been unknowingly complicit in harming children. Others demanded to know how they could help expose the full scope of the conspiracy. Harvey's phone buzzed with notifications as news outlets began reporting the mass arrests and the evidence he'd simultaneously released to media contacts across the country. The story was breaking nationally, with headlines like "Child Abuse Network Exposed" and "Fake Charity Enabled Systematic Poisoning." But Harvey's revenge wasn't complete yet. As the plaza emptied and law enforcement finished processing arrests, Harvey drove to the offices of Maternal Advocacy Solutions. Using his Dr. Daniel Holt identity, he'd scheduled a meeting with Dr. Dalton that would never happen. She was now in federal custody. But Patty McGraw, Belinda's sister and co-conspirator, was at the office trying to destroy evidence. Harvey found her in Dr. Dalton's office, frantically shredding documents. "Looking for something?" Harvey asked from the doorway. Patty spun around, recognizing him immediately. Her face went pale as she realized she'd been caught red-handed destroying evidence. "You're Harvey Ingram," she said accusingly. "You destroyed my sister's life." "Your sister destroyed herself," Harvey replied calmly. "And you helped her poison my daughter." Harvey pulled out his phone and showed Patty the recording app that was still running. Every word of their conversation was being documented. "The FBI has been monitoring this office for weeks," Harvey continued. "They know about the payments you received from Belinda, the fake witnesses you recruited, and the threats you helped coordinate against my family." Patty's composure cracked completely. "Belinda said Emma was just being dramatic. She said you were trying to take Emma away from her and that we needed to prove what a devoted mother she was. By poisoning a 12-year-old girl? We didn't know. Belinda said the doctors were wrong, that Emma had a rare condition that mimicked poisoning symptoms. She showed us research, medical studies." Harvey stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You helped coordinate online attacks against Dr. Chambers. You helped recruit other abusive mothers to the network. You profited from my daughter's suffering." Patty backed against the wall, clutching the shredded documents. "Please, I was just trying to help my sister. I didn't know how bad. 3 children are dead because of your network." Harvey cut her off. 3 children who would be alive today if you hadn't helped their abusers escape justice. Harvey turned and walked toward the door, leaving Patty surrounded by the evidence of her crimes. "The FBI will be here in 10 minutes, he said without looking back. "I suggest you use that time to think about the children you helped kill." As Harvey left the building, his phone rang. Detective Prince had updates on the arrests. "It's bigger than we thought," the detective reported. "The financial records you provided led us to network operations in 6 other states. We're estimating over 40 children were affected by this conspiracy." Harvey felt a mixture of satisfaction and horror. Justice was being served, but the scope of the damage was staggering. What happens to Belinda now? With the federal charges and evidence of interstate conspiracy, she's looking at life in prison without parole. Same for Dr. Dalton and Wayne Greer. The network is completely dismantled. Harvey sat in his car outside the federal building, watching as news vans arrived to cover the story. His methodical investigation had exposed and destroyed a criminal enterprise that had operated with impunity for years. But the real victory wasn't the arrests or the media coverage. It was knowing that Emma would never have to fear her mother again, and that no other child would suffer because of this particular network of predators. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma's school. "Dad, can you pick me up early? I saw the news about Mom on TV, and I want to come home." Harvey smiled, started his car, and drove toward the most important person in his life. The war was over, and his daughter was finally, truly safe. Chapter 8, The Reckoning. 3 weeks after the mass arrests, Harvey sat in the federal courthouse watching Wayne Greer's bail hearing. The attorney who had built his career defending child abusers now sat in orange prison garb, his arrogance replaced by the hollow look of a man whose carefully constructed world had collapsed overnight. Emma was with her therapist, Dr. Stevenson, working through the trauma of discovering that the adults she'd trusted had been part of a larger conspiracy to harm children. Harvey had insisted she be shielded from the media coverage, but at 12 years old, she was smart enough to understand the magnitude of what had been revealed. The courtroom was packed with reporters, law enforcement officials, and families of other victims who had come forward since the arrests. Harvey recognized several parents from the Warrior Moms support groups, people who had genuinely believed they were helping wrongfully accused mothers, but now realized they'd been manipulated into enabling abuse. Federal prosecutor Josephine Gilbert stood before the judge, presenting evidence that painted a devastating picture of the conspiracy Harvey had exposed. "Your Honor, Mr. Greer's law firm received over $3.2 million in payment from the criminal enterprise over a 4-year period. Bank records show that Mr. Greer personally approved payments to witnesses who later recanted testimony against his clients, and email communications reveal his direct involvement in coaching clients to lie under oath." Greer's new attorney, a public defender who looked overwhelmed by the scope of the case, attempted to argue that his client had been providing zealous representation within ethical boundaries. But the evidence Harvey had compiled made such arguments impossible to sustain. Judge Hector Nguyen, a stern man in his 60s with a reputation for harsh sentences in cases involving children, reviewed the evidence with growing disgust. "Mr. Greer," the judge said finally, "the evidence presented suggests that you knowingly facilitated the abuse of children by helping their abusers avoid prosecution. This court finds no circumstances under which bail would be appropriate." Greer's face crumbled as he was led back to his holding cell. Harvey felt no satisfaction watching the man's breakdown, only a cold sense that justice was finally being served. The bail hearing for Dr. Louise Dalton was scheduled for that afternoon. Harvey remained in the courthouse, using the break to review the latest developments in the case with Ian Blackwell. "The pharmaceutical company angle is developing into something bigger," Ian reported. The FBI found evidence that several drug manufacturers were paying the network for advance warning about upcoming Munchausen by proxy cases. They'd remove products like Ipecac syrup from certain markets before law enforcement could establish purchase patterns. Harvey shook his head in disgust. They were literally profiting from child abuse. "It gets worse. We found communications suggesting that some companies were actually marketing products to the network, providing information about which substances would cause specific symptoms while being difficult to detect in standard blood work. The scope of the conspiracy continued to expand beyond what Harvey had initially imagined. What had started as his investigation into Belinda's abuse of Emma had uncovered a criminal enterprise that spanned multiple states and included major corporations. What's the latest on Belinda herself? Ian's expression grew grim. She's trying to cut a deal. Her new attorney is claiming she was manipulated by Dr. Dalton and that she genuinely believed she was helping Emma by seeking extensive medical care. Harvey felt his anger flare. Even now, facing life in prison, Belinda was still trying to manipulate the narrative and present herself as a victim. The prosecutors aren't buying it, not with the evidence you compiled. The communications between Belinda and her sister show clear knowledge that she was poisoning Emma for financial gain. There's also evidence that she was recruiting other mothers to the network in exchange for referral bonuses. Dr. Dalton's bail hearing was even more devastating than Greer's. Prosecutor Gilbert presented evidence showing that Dr. Dalton had been providing false expert testimony for over a decade, helping dozens of child abusers avoid prosecution in exchange for payment. Dr. Dalton positioned herself as a champion of wrongfully accused mothers, Gilbert told the court. But evidence shows that she knew many of her clients were guilty and helped them escape justice anyway. She perverted her professional credentials to enable the systematic abuse of children. The most damning evidence came from Dr. Dalton's own files, which Harvey had helped the FBI obtain through his Dr. Daniel Holt persona. Her notes showed clear awareness that several of her clients were abusing their children, along with strategies for discrediting legitimate medical evidence. Judge Nguyen's voice was ice-cold as he addressed Dr. Dalton directly. Dr. Dalton, you held yourself out as an expert in child psychology while simultaneously enabling the abuse of the very children you claim to protect. Your actions represent a profound betrayal of professional ethics and human decency. Bail is denied. As Dr. Dalton was led away, Harvey noticed several other parents in the courtroom, people whose children had died or suffered permanent damage because of the network's intervention in their abuse cases. Some were crying. Others looked shell-shocked by the revelation that professionals they trusted had been part of a criminal conspiracy. That evening, Harvey received a call from Emma's school principal, Preston Sims. Mr. Ingram, I wanted to let you know that several other parents have come forward with concerns about their children's medical histories. It appears that your wife may have been recruiting other mothers from our school community to her network. Harvey felt sick. How many children? We're still investigating, but it looks like at least 6 families were influenced by Mrs. Ingram's advice about seeking extensive medical care for minor symptoms. 3 of those children were subsequently hospitalized for mysterious illnesses. Harvey realized that Belinda's crimes extended even beyond what the FBI had uncovered. She hadn't just been abusing Emma. She'd been actively recruiting other mothers to abuse their children, using her reputation as a devoted mother to gain their trust. What can I do to help? The school district is cooperating fully with law enforcement. But Mr. Ingram, I think you should know, several parents have asked if they can thank you personally for exposing this network. Without your investigation, their children might still be in danger. After the call ended, Harvey sat in his office looking at the wall of evidence he'd compiled over the past months. Photos of Emma's recovery, financial records documenting the conspiracy, communications between network members discussing their crimes. It was the most complex and important case of his career. But the real measure of his success wasn't the number of arrests or the media coverage. It was Emma's laughter echoing through the house as she played with friends who came to visit after school, something that hadn't happened in over 2 years while she was being systematically poisoned. His phone rang with a call from Detective Prince. Harvey, I wanted to give you a heads up. Patty McGraw's attorney is claiming she was manipulated by her sister and wants to cooperate with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. Harvey considered this development. What's she offering? Information about network operations in other states, names of additional conspirators, and details about how they recruited new victims. It could help us identify more children who were harmed by this enterprise. And her sentence? Probably 10 to 15 years instead of life. The prosecutors think her information could prevent future abuse by exposing the full scope of the network. Harvey found himself conflicted. Patty McGraw had helped poison his daughter and threatened his family, but her cooperation could save other children from similar abuse. What do you think I should do? That's not my decision to make, Detective Prince replied. But I will say this. The information she's providing has already led to arrests in 3 other states. Her cooperation is helping us shut down the entire network, not just the Chicago operation. That night, as Harvey tucked Emma into bed, she asked the question he'd been dreading. Dad, why did Mom want to hurt me? Harvey sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. Your mom is sick in a way that made her think hurting you would get her the attention she wanted from other people. She convinced herself that she was helping you, but she was really hurting you to make herself feel important. Emma nodded solemnly. Dr. Stevenson said some people hurt children because they're broken inside. That's right. But Emma, what happened to you wasn't your fault, and you never have to worry about being hurt like that again. Because you stopped her? Harvey smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his daughter's forehead. Because I love you more than anything in the world, and I will never let anyone hurt you again. As Emma drifted off to sleep, Harvey realized that his revenge against Belinda and her network was complete. They would spend the rest of their lives in prison, their reputations destroyed, their criminal enterprise dismantled. But more importantly, Emma was safe, healing, and surrounded by people who genuinely loved and protected her. That was the only victory that truly mattered. Chapter 9, New Beginnings. 6 months after the arrests, Harvey stood in Chicago Memorial Hospital's conference room, addressing a gathering of medical professionals, law enforcement officials, and child protection advocates. The same hospital where Dr. Chambers had first recognized Belinda and saved Emma's life was now hosting a symposium on identifying and preventing Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Emma sat in the front row, healthy and confident in a way she hadn't been for years. At her request, she'd been allowed to attend the presentation where her father would be speaking about recognizing the warning signs of medical child abuse. Her therapist, Dr. Stevenson, sat beside her, proud of how far Emma had come in her recovery. The network we exposed operated successfully for over a decade because they understood how to exploit the medical system's greatest strength, our trust in concerned parents, Harvey told the assembled audience. Medical professionals are trained to believe caregivers who report symptoms and seek treatment for their children. This trust is essential for proper pediatric care, but can also be weaponized by those who would harm children for personal gain. Harvey's presentation included detailed case studies from the conspiracy, showing how the network had systematically manipulated medical professionals, legal proceedings, and public opinion. But he was careful to protect the privacy of the children who had been victimized, including Emma. Dr. Chambers, who had become something of a hero in the medical community for his role in exposing Belinda, joined Harvey for the question and answer session. The key is pattern recognition, Dr. Chambers explained. Individual symptoms can have innocent explanations, but when you see repeated hospitalizations with symptoms that only occur in the presence of a specific caregiver, and that caregiver is unusually knowledgeable about medical terminology while being dismissive of the child's distress, you need to consider the possibility of induced illness. After the presentation, Harvey was approached by several parents whose children had been victims of similar abuse. Some were families he'd identified during his investigation, while others had come forward after the media coverage of the arrests. Mr. Ingram, said a woman named Charlotte Copeland, whose son had been systematically poisoned by his stepmother, I wanted to thank you. Because of your investigation, my ex-husband's wife was arrested before she could cause permanent damage. My son is alive because you had the courage to expose this network. Similar conversations continued throughout the day. Harvey learned that his investigation had ultimately led to the identification of over 60 children who had been victims of the network, with prosecutions ongoing in 12 states. 3 pharmaceutical companies were facing federal charges for their role in the conspiracy, and legislation was being drafted to strengthen reporting requirements for suspicious patterns of rare medication purchases. But the victory that meant the most to Harvey was the simplest: Emma's recovery. She'd gained 30 pounds since leaving the hospital, her grades were back on track, and she'd made several close friends at school. Most importantly, she'd regained the trust and joy that Belinda's abuse had nearly destroyed. That evening, as Harvey and Emma walked through their neighborhood after dinner, she brought up a subject they'd been discussing with Dr. Stevenson. "Dad, I've been thinking about what I want to do when I grow up," Emma said. "Oh, what are you thinking?" "I want to help other kids who get hurt like I did. Maybe be a doctor or a police officer or something that helps people." Harvey smiled, proud of his daughter's resilience and compassion. "Those are all wonderful choices. You've got plenty of time to decide." Dr. Stevenson says that sometimes people who get hurt can use their experience to help others heal. "Is that what you did when you caught Mom and her friends?" Harvey considered the question carefully. "In a way, yes. I used the skills I learned from my job to make sure that what happened to you wouldn't happen to other children." They walked in comfortable silence for a moment before Emma asked another question. "Do you think Mom will ever get better?" Harvey had been dreading this conversation, but Dr. Stevenson had advised him to be honest while age-appropriate. "I don't know, sweetheart. The doctors say that people who hurt children the way your mom did rarely get completely better. That's why she's going to stay in prison for a very long time, to make sure she can't hurt anyone else." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "I feel sad for her sometimes, but I'm not scared anymore." "You never have to be scared again," Harvey assured her. "And it's okay to feel sad for her. Having complicated feelings about someone who hurt you doesn't make you weak, it makes you human." Later that night, Harvey received a call from Ian Blackwell with the final updates on the prosecutions. "Belinda took a plea deal," Ian reported. "Life in prison without parole. She'll never see freedom again." Harvey felt a complicated mix of satisfaction and sadness. Justice had been served, but the woman he'd once loved was gone forever, replaced by a stranger who had tried to kill their daughter for attention and money. What about the others? Dr. Dalton got life without parole as well. Wayne Greer got 40 years. Patty McGraw's cooperation earned her 15 years, but she'll be eligible for parole in 8 with good behavior. Harvey nodded. The sentences were appropriate for the magnitude of their crimes. "There's something else," Ian continued. "The FBI wants to offer you a consulting position. They're creating a task force focused on identifying and dismantling networks that exploit children, and they want someone with your investigative skills and understanding of how these conspiracies operate." Harvey considered the offer. It would be meaningful work, using his abilities to protect other children from predators who operated through manipulation and institutional exploitation. "I'll think about it," he said. The next morning brought news that would have shocked Harvey a year earlier. Several major news outlets wanted to interview him about his investigation and the techniques he'd used to expose the network. Publishers were interested in his story, and there had even been inquiries from television producers about dramatizing the case. But Harvey's priorities had changed fundamentally. Fame and recognition were less important than ensuring Emma's continued healing and protecting other vulnerable children. He agreed to one major interview, with the stipulation that Emma's privacy would be protected and that any proceed from the story would go toward funding research and support programs for children who had been victims of medical abuse. A year after the arrests, Harvey stood in his renovated home office, no longer the war room where he'd planned his campaign against Belinda's network, but a normal workspace where he balanced his consulting work for the FBI task force with his restored private practice. Emma burst through the door after school, excited to share news about a science project she'd been working on, research into the psychological effects of long-term low-dose poisoning on children. Her teacher had been so impressed with her work that she'd been invited to present her findings at a regional science fair. "Dad, look at this." Emma showed him a chart documenting the recovery patterns of children who had been victims of medical abuse. "Did you know that kids who get the right help can actually become stronger than they were before they got hurt?" Harvey looked at his daughter, healthy, confident, and passionate about helping others who had faced similar trauma, and realized that Emma had already become the person she was meant to be. The abuse had been a terrible detour in her life, but it hadn't broken her. If anything, it had revealed her extraordinary resilience and compassion. "That's called post-traumatic growth," Harvey explained. "It means that surviving something difficult can sometimes make people stronger and more understanding of others who are struggling." "Is that what happened to you too?" Emma asked perceptively. Harvey smiled, realizing that his daughter was right. The investigation that had destroyed Belinda's network and saved Emma's life had also transformed him from methodical forensic accountant into someone who understood the importance of fighting for vulnerable children, even when that fight required methods beyond conventional legal procedures. I think it is, he admitted. That evening, as Harvey tucked Emma into bed, she shared her latest decision about her future career. "Dad, I've decided I want to be a forensic psychologist. Like you find the truth in numbers, I want to find the truth in people's behavior. I want to help catch people who hurt children before they can hurt them as much as Mom hurt me." Harvey felt a surge of pride and love for his remarkable daughter. Emma had taken the worst experience of her young life and transformed it into motivation to protect other children. "I think you'd be amazing at that," Harvey said, kissing her forehead. "But remember, you've got plenty of time to explore different possibilities." "I know," Emma replied sleepily. "But I also know that some people need to be stopped, and I want to be someone who stops them." As Harvey turned off the lights and headed to his own room, he reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. A year ago, he'd been a man whose life was built on carefully controlled routine, trusting others to handle the parts of life outside his expertise. The discovery of Belinda's abuse had shattered that controlled world, forcing him to become someone he'd never imagined. A man willing to operate outside conventional boundaries to protect his child and expose a conspiracy that threatened vulnerable children across the country. But in destroying Belinda's network and securing Emma's safety, Harvey had also discovered something important about himself. Justice wasn't always found in courtrooms or legal proceedings. Sometimes it required the courage to fight battles that existed in the shadows, using unconventional methods to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Emma was safe now, surrounded by people who genuinely loved her and would never allow her to be harmed again. The network that had enabled her abuse was dismantled, its members imprisoned, and its victims identified and protected. Most importantly, Emma had emerged from her trauma stronger and more compassionate, determined to use her experience to help other children who face similar dangers. Harvey had set out to save his daughter's life and ended up transforming both of their lives in ways he could never have imagined. The methodical accountant was still there, but he'd been joined by something more dangerous and more determined. A father who would go to any lengths to protect children from those who would exploit their vulnerability. As he drifted off to sleep, Harvey felt the deep satisfaction that came from knowing that Emma was not just safe, but thriving, and that their ordeal had ultimately made them both stronger and more purposeful than they'd ever been before. The war was over. They had won, and the future stretched ahead of them, bright with possibilities neither of them could have imagined a year earlier when their perfect suburban life had been revealed as a carefully constructed lie. Emma was free, the predators were imprisoned, and Harvey had discovered that sometimes the greatest victories required the courage to fight battles that existed far beyond the comfortable boundaries of conventional justice. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.